Good evening, everyone. Severe Weather Team 9 meteorologist Nathan Shaw joining you for this edition of Nate at 8. And coming up, well, we're going to be tracking a lot of what we've seen here as of recent over the past few days, continuing for your Monday, and just looks to continue as we go throughout this week. Despite some cool mornings, we end up with some warm afternoons, and where we repeat this cycle with a lot of 80s for highs and 50s for lows. That's what we're going to see a lot of here as we go over the next week, and even taking a sneak peek into next week as well. A lot of the same. We'll start to see a little bit of warming in those overnight lows, but for a lot of the stretch, it's more of the same. In addition to that, abundant sunshine breaks out into Thursday and Friday. More of a mix of sun and clouds the next couple days, but barely a cloud in sight likely later on into the week. Once we see more clouds mix in for the weekend is when we'll be starting to track at least some rain chances in sight. Not to say we're going to be dealing with a lot of rain, as we're likely not, but at least we can pick up on some much needed rain. Hopefully at least a little bit is in our future by the time we get into next week. So we'll break that down as well. Thanks so much for tuning in to this edition of Nate at 8. I appreciate it as always. And again, that's a bit of what we're going to be talking about coming up for this edition of Nate at 8. So first off, let's touch on those temperatures, which for today, again, right back in the 80s this afternoon, low temperatures dipping back into the 70s. We've got a great chance. Today marked 4 days in a row. And like I mentioned, there's no end in sight this week. So we are going to be looking at well over a week straight of high temperatures, 80 plus, at least. I do think we can cool back into the 70s looking ahead later next week. But to that being said, in terms of 7 or more consecutive days with those high temperatures, 80 plus in the month of September is pretty rare for us. We do have to go back. Last year, we had that 13 actually consecutive days. Before that was back in 2019. It's nothing that's extremely rare, but it's certainly not typical. This time of the year, those average high temperatures are falling in the 70s. So when you start to deal with the highest 80 plus consecutively for a week or more, and it's something again that isn't extremely rare, but we have only seen that now the second time over the past 5 years. A little more common before that between 2015 and 2020, where it was actually a handful of years. Most of those years ended up seeing at least one stretch, but it is something worth noting. Another thing worth noting are these low temperatures. I think these low temperatures are much more of a story than those high temperatures during the stretch. And not only talking about September, but even looking back into August. And we look here over the past month, so from the 15th of August to the 15th today of September, and to that 58 degree for a low this morning, that was actually the warmest low that we've had dating back in over 3 weeks, 22 days now in a row where low temperatures have been 58 degrees or below. And again, 58 has been the warmest. Before that was 57. And we've seen a lot of these days at 57 and below, but today came in at 58 for that low. And again, over 3 weeks now, 22 consecutive days we've had here in the Ohio Valley with lows at or below what has been 58 at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport. And again, before today, it was even 57 and below. So quite a stretch. And we look during this time period within this past month. So we go from the middle of August to the middle of September. And we reference that time period dating back to other years since 2000. And you'll see that this is something in the past 25 years that we have not seen this time of the year. And by a long shot, this is something we have not seen by a long shot. This consecutive stretch of these cool nights, as you'll see, the second most consecutive lows at or below 58 this time of the year, again, from the middle of August to the middle of September, we have to go all the way back to 2017, and that was 10 days. 10 days. That's less than half of 22. So again, quite a pretty historic stretch here of cool mornings for this time of the year, right? So the middle of August to the middle of September for this time of the year. And in fact, if I reference to what is on record for the Wheeling area, which isn't the best climate records, there's gaps, unfortunately, in that data. But what we do have on record, at least, we have to go back to even before 1940s. We have to go back a long time ago before we're dealing with 20 plus consecutive lows during this time of the year. So just interesting tidbit that if you've been noticing and picking up on these series of cool mornings that, again, we're even dealing with continuing for a lot of this week as well, despite dealing with warm afternoons, that, certainly not wrong in thinking that it's been atypical to deal with this many cool mornings for this time of the year. And like I mentioned, we continue this stretch of these lows in the 50s for tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning, Thursday morning, Friday morning, and likely even Saturday morning. I do think we'll get back more 60s by Sunday, Monday morning. But up until that point, we're continuing these cool mornings, warm afternoons. So it's a taste of both. If you like the cooler temperatures, you've got the cool night. Up until we get into Sunday, Monday, it's still that kind of, and even Sunday, Monday is not a warm night. It's mild, but not warm. But, these lows in the 50s, it's still that kind of weather. You can open up the window, let some cooler air in if you want overnight, and help cool down the house on these warm days where these high temperatures are climbing. Mid-upper 80s, mid-lower 80s likely in the next couple of days, but even today, even some upper 80s in the mix, and we'll get back closer to that again Thursday and Friday. Once we see abundant sun breakout, we can climb back well into the 80s later on into the week. So again, the continuation here of some unseasonably warm temperatures, and just the warm afternoons and cool mornings. That's a lot of what we're going to see here over the next 7 days. The temperature is trending a lot warmer than what we've seen closer to the beginning of this month, right? Even over a week ago, it was certainly not the case. So big difference coming our way, that's for sure here. Just continuation of what we've seen over the past several days, and just continuing now here as we go over the next week. And I do think the middle to latter part of next week can feature just a little bit of a cool down, but not much. I think it's overall a pretty warm pattern as we look ahead here to wrap up the month. So if you like the warmer temperatures, summer kind of sticking around a little bit longer, I think you're in luck. I do think that, we're trending near normal, if not above normal, for a lot of the stretch. I don't think we're getting a cool stretch returning here at any point this month. So the cool stretch that we had there at the end of August and into the beginning of September does not look to return. We could have some cool days in the mix, but I think overall we're seeing a lot more of these unseasonably warm days. At least some 70s and 80s is likely what we're going to deal with for a lot of this stretch as we wrap up the month. Again, we can deal with continuation. Summer can linger, even despite fall beginning, which now is just a week away, our last week of fall, just a week away from the beginning of fall next Monday. And certainly the last week of summer living up to it, right? Dealing with some warm temperatures. So these temperatures, they varied here as of recent, right? Over the past several weeks, we've certainly seen a variance of these temperatures, but we all know the one constant variable, right? What has not changed? Dry conditions. Boy, this has been a really historic dry stretch of weather. We could go even back since the end of July, even over the past 50 days. Just not been much. 1.08 inches of rain that's it. It's been registered at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport over the past 50 days. I look back on comparison over a 50-day period from what's on record, and I go back to 2007. We have to go back 2007, a long time, right? I mean, nearly 20 years ago. It's how far back we have to go to last time we had a comparable stretch. That's when we had 1.06 inches of rain measured at the airport over a 50-day stretch from the end of August there going into a little past that midpoint of October. So it's been almost 20 years since we've had this dry of a stretch over a span of 50 days. And again, it's not ending now. It's just continuing as we go throughout this week. And as we look ahead, unfortunately, the drought conditions that are in place can only just continue to progressively get worse. Unfortunately, I know there's some rain chances in sight, but it's not drought busting rain, I don't think, coming our way. And ultimately, this is still a dry pattern this week. We can get a little relief, I think, into next week, but again, just not enough to be a complete reversal of this. I just don't. It's not going to be enough, I don't think, to be a drought buster. It's a brief, I think, a little more wet period into next week, where at least we could end up with some showers around, but it's not a whole lot of rain likely. It's a little more of a wet pattern, but it's brief. And then we're likely getting back to just more warm and dry. That looks to be the forecasted long range forecast going into the latter part of this month. So it's just bad news, unfortunately, when it comes to drought conditions, which, a vast majority of us under that moderate drought. There's a portion now under the severe drought. This U.S. drought monitor, it'll be released on Thursday. So the latest one, which would indicate conditions into the parts of last week into the beginning of this week, that will be reflected in the drought monitor that will be issued for this coming Thursday. So yes, going to likely continue to see worsening conditions, drought conditions across the area with that latest drought monitor that will be issued for this coming Thursday. And before we continue to dive further in, I don't want to keep putting out these comments. I promise I'm not ignoring them. Just wanted to get through some stuff, but I really appreciate all of you tuning in. As always, thank you so much. Austin, good evening. Hope you had a wonderful week off. Sure did. Thank you, Austin. Can't believe this September is feeling like a very late summer. I'm very ready for cooler weather, and some of you tuning in may agree with us in there that we had that bit of a tease at fall, at the end of August, that first part of September, and before it turned warm again on us here over the past several days. And yeah, at this point, I don't foresee us going back to what we had there at the end of August. This is probably going to be a pretty warm pattern here going into a lot of the remainder of the month here. For the second half of September, a lot of this is going to probably end up being pretty warm, and a lot of 70s, 80s, I think, could be our future. As again, keep in mind the normal temperatures this time of the year falling through the 70s. It's going to be closer to 70 by the end of the month. So the normal highs are mid-lower 70s into the second half of September. So 70s would be more normal, but I think we can, just like this week, get more 80s back in the mix. So yeah, still going to be a continuation. I think that summer is going to linger a bit further into the end here of the month. And we'll see then as we look ahead going into October, if we can get some of those cooler days, which it's a matter of time, right, before we see an end to the stretch of 80s. But yeah, at least here near term, a lot of the remainder of September here can still bring us a stretch of some 80s coming our way. So if you like the warm temperatures, still in luck here, at least here near term. Joe, good evening. Welcome back. Hope you had a nice vacation. Thank you very much, Joe. I appreciate that. Shelly, thanks. You're welcome, Shelly. Thank you. Thank you all for tuning in to this edition of Nate at 8. So like we mentioned, the precipitation threat, it's present. It's just not a lot. So there's a look at rain chances. And we went ahead and bumped this to Friday because up until Saturday, there is no threat at all. And even Saturday, we're likely dry. But I think by Sunday, Monday is when we have a little better odds for at least a stray shower in our area. Again, these are not high rain chances. I do have some hope for around next Tuesday with that cold front passage. Hopefully we can, as we gain a little more confidence, up rain chances. I do think that's going to be our best chance for a little more widespread precipitation. So as we get closer to Tuesday and we gain a little more confidence, not to say that's going to be widespread steady rainfall for a long period of time, which is what we need, right? Obviously, don't want to pick up an excessive amount here short term, but we do need more of that widespread steady rain to help with this drought conditions than these more scattered showers. But certainly take anything we can get. But what we do see here near term for a lot of this, it is likely more hit or miss. So that being said, there can still be plenty of locations that for a lot of that stretch going into that first half of next week that can still stay fairly dry. Outside, I think of around Tuesday, I think is that best chance. So it's in line with that cold front passage next week with that frontal passage. As we adjust the timing of it, that would bring likely the best chance for a little more widespread shower activity, at least coming our way. So there's some, thankfully there's some rain chances in sight. Again, this is just likely not any drought busting precipitation. And a lot of what we will likely see is much more hit or miss. And for a lot of those days, it's likely more of just a chance, right? With it being more hit or miss. But hopefully we can at least get one day there of a little more widespread showers with that cold front passage next week. And that's when, once we get past that, the temperatures can drop back at least in the 70s, at least back closer to seasonable values going into the latter part of next week, around next Wednesday, Thursday. And it's pretty close in timing with the Parnesville Pumpkin Festival. So, we'll map out the timing of that front. As it stands now, the front arrives and exits by Wednesday. So if that rings true and the timing doesn't get bumped back some, then the weather does look to cooperate pretty well for the pumpkin festival, for the weigh-in on Wednesday and for the ribbon cutting on Thursday. Again, if the timing of the front gets pushed back a bit, maybe we have to deal with some rain for the weigh-in on Wednesday, just timing up that cold front passage. But hopefully it stands as is now, and we'll get that rain out of the way by Wednesday evening for the weigh-in, and then going into Thursday for the ribbon cutting as high pressure builds in, should settle in for some pretty nice weather later into next week. If you are interested or have plans to go to the Barnesville Pumpkin Festival coming up later into next week. So the other question, of course, is where do we go from here, right? And like I mentioned, the long-range forecasts, like we've discussed, really favors those above normal temperatures, even 8 to 14 days. Now, that 6 to 10 day forecast, keep in mind, that's what we were looking for that more first half of next week, right? And you'll see those rain chances we discussed reflected in that forecast, where it can into trending a little wetter than normal. And hopefully, again, that does come to fruition, but likely not enough to be, drought busting precipitation. This drought just likely even continues even past the middle of next week, but at least some much needed rain is in sight. At least some likely into that part of next week at that 6 to 10 day time frame, which is again into that more first half of next week. Get past that, notice what happens then going into 8 to 14 days out, and even as we wrap up this month, 3 to 4 weeks out. It's just, unfortunately, as you can see, doesn't look to be a flip in the pattern in terms of the dry conditions, as even favoring more normal to drier than normal conditions going into 3 to 4 week forecasts, and still favoring above normal temperatures as well. So there's good odds that, again, a lot of these days here as we wrap up this month end up still pretty warm for this time of the year, more normal, if not above normal. And for a lot of these days could end up dry. So a lot of what we've seen as of recent, right? Not so much with the warm temperatures. We've been quite cool at the end of August, beginning of September, but even for this week, right? With these above normal temperatures, that looks to carry over likely for a lot of the remainder of this month, and the dry conditions for a lot of the remainder of the month, as well as what the long range forecast is favoring here as we look ahead over the next couple of weeks and into the end of September. So again, your 9+1 day forecast. This is going to be a beautiful stretch of weather coming up as we go throughout this week. By Thursday and Friday, again, I think there is barely a cloud in sight. A lot of sunshine likely Thursday, Friday, maybe a few clouds in the mix, but just going to be absolutely gorgeous days. Still a lot of sunshine Wednesday, more of a mix of sun and clouds tomorrow. Just in general, beautiful weather as we go into this weekend. Again, by Sunday especially, there's that potential for maybe have to dodge a shower or two in the area. Maybe, again, it's certainly no guarantee. By all means, make outdoor plans this weekend. This is nothing to alter plans for. Make outdoor plans. It's not going to put a big damper on anything you have planned for this weekend at all. That's for sure in terms of those rain chances. By Monday, again, same story. I think with the timing of that cold front passage next week, that delivers the best chance for us when it comes to some more widespread showers. That could put a little more damper on outdoor plans. Again, it's a matter of just fine-tuning the timing of that cold front passage into next week. As it stands now, it's more Tuesday into Tuesday night, and then by Wednesday starting to dry back up and more sunshine breaking out into next Thursday. Again, we can trend at least a little bit cooler around that time period, but still not anticipating to flip to a cool pattern, right? Is the normal high again at this point, mid 70s. Again, as we go through the second half of this month, we'll fall through the 70s and we'll get closer to 70 for a normal high by the end of this month. So normal highs, mid-lower 70s in the second half of this month. And we can get back in the 70s, but even technically trend a little bit above normal, even with that cool down next Wednesday and Thursday, as those highs could be more mid-upper 70s during that stretch. So a little bit of a cool down, I think, can be in sight, but what we're seeing here over the next 10 days with a lot of unseasonably warm temperatures can be a reflection of what we'll see wrapping up this month. Which, again, keep in mind, even those upper 70s is above normal this time of the year. So it doesn't mean we're dealing with 80s every day here to wrap up the month, but you get the idea. It's still going to be pretty warm for this time of the year, likely for a lot of these days into the second half of September, and for a lot of them, likely pretty dry as well. Again, hopefully we can sneak in at least a few showers for the latter part of this weekend into early next week, and hopefully deal with a little more widespread shower activity around next Tuesday into Tuesday night. We'll pick up what we can, certainly. Again, this is quite a historic dry stretch. Keep in mind that, again, what we've had here over the past 50 days is something we did not get last year, right? When we remember the historic drought last year, we have to go back to 2007. 2007, over the past 50 days, only 1.08 inches of total precipitation at the Wheeling, Ohio County Airport. And to get that dry of conditions, that low amount of precipitation over a 50-day period, we have to go back to 2007, the last time that occurred over a 50-day period. So again, in terms of this stretch over the end of July, now continuing into through the middle of September, right? And even now continuing into the second half of September, that this has been a sudden just drop in precipitation, right? And we started, thankfully, the summer, we started wet, and we would be in a lot worse conditions when it comes to the drought if it wasn't for that, right? But now it's been a sudden sharp turn to dry conditions and a fast yield. These drought conditions happen quick, right? Happen quick due to how dry of a stretch that we've been in now for over the past even a little over 50 days, and just continuing. Again, not ending here this week, a little relief next week, but overall likely continuing into a lot of the remainder of September as well. Also said, mowed Saturday, and a very large praying mantis popped out of nowhere. It looked like my hand size. Oh, wow. Never knew that praying mantis could get that large. That's very cool, Austin. And those are cool to see, aren't they? And that's a big one. That's really cool, Austin. Thanks for sharing. That is cool. Those are always fascinating to see, those praying mantis. And some folks may think they might be a little scary, but they're pretty cool. Kind of scary, a little scary, a little cool, maybe a little both. But I certainly take all the praying mantis over the spotted lanternflies, right? Those can kindly go away. Let's see. Maybe a lot of you share that same thought, that we'll take the praying mantis, but we'll get rid of the spotted lanternflies, as it's so many, And if you're tuning in and haven't dealt with many yet, unfortunately, it's likely a matter of time. It's been, they're quite bad, that's for sure. And they seem to just continue to move further and further west year after year across the valley, and eventually moving further west across the Buckeye State and even into the Midwest, I'm sure, with time. But yeah, been not good. They are quite literally everywhere. That's for sure. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen them too, I'm sure. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much for tuning in. I appreciate it as always. I hope everyone had a wonderful Monday and past weekend. Again, if you like the weather as of recent, it's just continuing this week. It's going to be gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous weather to enjoy the outdoors as we go into the weekend. And even for this weekend, the beautiful weather just continues. Again, we'll have more clouds around the weekend, maybe spotting some showers, but again, nothing to cancel plans over. I do think that with that cold front passage next week, hopefully we can get a little more widespread showers into the first half of next week. And from there, likely getting back to more of a dry pattern again, going into that following weekend, which is pretty good timing into the Barnesville Pumpkin Festival. So hopefully timing works out for that. If you have plans to go down to Barnesville for the Pumpkin Festival, that we could start to see some dry conditions return again with maybe a little bit of a cool down. Maybe we get back in the 70s, a little more festive temperatures for the Pumpkin Festival, but likely not going to hold on to the 70s very long in this warm pattern. That's for sure. Thanks so much for tuning in. You can catch me coming up News Night at 10 on Fox 9, News Night tonight at 11 for the latest, and as always for that next edition of 8 at 8. So until then, I hope everyone has a wonderful night, and I'll see all of you on the next edition of Nate at 8.